So welcome, Ginny Rorby, FGM number one. Ooh, I said it in public. We'll come back and explain what that means later. But so you and I have known each other quite a while now. I think that we first met in 2011. Is that right?
I
Was it?
think so. I think so. 12 or 13 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do the math. I met you when I was 10 years old. And
Yes, I remember that. You were so cute.
But so I think that one of the challenges when I was preparing to do this interview, one of the challenges I think for me is that because I've known you so well and for so long, there's going to be a temptation to kind of skip, because I know so much of this. So I don't want to do that. So I want to give this some structure. So I thought the easiest structure to follow is, let's do it as a narrative and follow an arc here. And so I want you to start us off in the bowels of a plane on a Pan Am jet. So can you tell us, Ginny Rorby, what you were doing in that Pan Am jet when you really should have been taking better care of your paying customers?
I was taking damn good care of the paying customers. I started when I first started writing. I didn't retire from flying for Pan Am until 1989, and I started my first novel, Dolphin Sky, in 1985. And I was going to University of Miami working on an undergraduate degree in biology, and I started writing. And so I actually wrote Dolphin Sky, the majority of it, in the belly of the DC-10 on the way to London every Friday night. I flew to London every Friday and I came back every Sunday, and then I went to school all week. And so I had my school books and I did all the cooking for first class and coach in the galley of the DC-10. And so that is what she's what she's referring to. And it was so I was taking very good care of the passengers. I'm just very organized.
Well,
Um,
I've never actually imagined that all the cooking was happening in the belly of the plane.
in the DC-10 it was, yeah. In the DC-10, yeah.
So in the belly of this plane, then you start writing this book called Dolphin Sky. And that book was to take you how long by the time you kind of finished?
Well, I noodled it probably took me 3 years because I was doing a lot of research. It takes place in Chokoloskee, Florida, which is an island off the southern coast, and it's kind of in between Tampa and Miami, Naples and Miami. And there used to be captive dolphins that were kept in a pond there on this Wooten's airboat ride, and he had captive dolphins in a freshwater pond. And my husband, was the accountant for Smallwood Store, which was built in 1910 or earlier, and on stilts, and survived the hurricane and everything, in 1910 hurricane. And I knew all this history about Chokoloskee, and I knew about the dolphins, and then I had to learn about stone crab fishing because the main character's father is a stone crab fisherman. So I was going back and forth, learning that, going out with stone crab fishing men, and doing the research for that. So that's how it. So it did take me about 3 years and another 5 to get it published.
Right. But I mean, 3 years to write, even then for a first novel, it's pretty fast. But okay, let's take a step back though. So what made you, when you were in the bowels of the Pan Am, like what made you decide that you wanted to write a novel? Because it was quite a career change for you.
It's a total
It
career.
became, yeah, it became
Yeah,
quite.
I never wrote anything until I wrote an editorial comment that was published as an editorial comment about an abandoned dog, and that my friend Joanne found, and we drugged and took to a vet and had it put to sleep because it was in such horrible condition. And so when I that story, the dog had it had mange so badly it had no hair at all except for one stripe down its back. We think it was probably a Weimaraner. It had an open sore on its side with maggots living in the side of the dog. And we took that dog and had it put to sleep. And then I wrote the very first thing I'd ever written in my life. Trust me, I didn't even write thank you notes, letters, anything. I wrote the story and I entitled it "We Found Your Dog." And it was cathartic. It was just to get it down on paper, not that I had any plan to do anything with it. And I found it a year later in my stewardess purse, my uniform purse. And I happened to be at the Miami News and with photographs I'd taken of the Everglade kite, the endangered Everglade kite, and I found it and I handed it to the woman. I said, maybe you can do something with this. And the next day it was in the paper as an editorial, and the editor called and he said if I could write like that, they'd publish anything I wrote. And at that point, I had calculus, physics, and organic chemistry yet to take. And I took a creative writing class instead. And the rest is history. That's how I started writing. And that was in 1982, was the first thing I ever wrote. So
Right.
I'm already elderly, practically.
So right from the beginning, then you were writing about animals, and and your website, for those who haven't been, says advocate, activist, and then author, I believe. So you encapsulated to me in a discussion once what motivates you as a writer, like why you write. Can you put that into words for us again, or?
Yes. Well, it's all about, I mean, the dolphin, the book that came to me, I was on a layover in San Domingo, and my mother had just been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was listening. I was listening to a Willie Nelson tape of the music from the Electric Horseman, and it was the Electric Horseman. If anybody didn't see it, some of you might be too young to remember it, but it was about Robert Redford and Jane Fonda, and he was in an act in Las Vegas with a horse, and he was so appalled by the treatment of the horse that he stole it from the mob and took it out to the desert and took off and let the horse go free. And that is the storyline, practically everything I've ever written. I mean, I just stole the plot line. And so, and this, I happen to know about those captive dolphins. And so that whole book came to me listening to that music and thinking about my mother she was dying. And so that was the launch me. And I've always written about animals and kids because I want kids to appreciate, especially kids with disabilities of some sort, to appreciate the link that you can feel with animals and the comfort and the I think that's to me the safe places in nature and with animals, and I wanted kids to feel that same thing. That I stumbled all over that. Sorry. Motivation has been always.
Right. And so, okay, so you've started writing these essays, editorials.
Mhm.
You're getting your voice out there. It's getting published. You started writing this novel because part of it you weren't like too scared to decide to make him a stone crab farmer though, and then have to research all that. But so after 3 years, you're ready to go. What happens then? How did you find your agent? Which half of this room, that's one of the two big questions. So
Yes, well, I can understand why. Actually, I ended up going to the Florida. I graduated from the University of Miami in '85, and I'd gone back to school when I was 33. So I went back in 1977, and I then was accepted into the first class of the Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing program at Florida International University. And one of the teachers there was Lynn Barrett. And I know some of you that have gone to the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference a number of times may have been in classes with Lynn. She's amazing. And anyway, my first agent was her agent. And so she recommended me. And her name, I finally remembered her name because she was only my agent for Dolphin Sky, and trying to get the next book, Hurt Go Happy, published wore her out. She retired, so I don't, I never saw her again. So, anyhow.
So the first agent then through a referral.
Exact. Second agent too.
Oh,
Second agent was also a referral
referral from whom? The second agent.
from Bonnie Hearn. Bonnie Hearn. She used to teach at the conference, and
Mhm.
she recommended my second agent, and she
And
went
did she meet you through the conference?
Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, yeah. I've known Bonnie for decades, so she was.
Okay. So before we keep going, we need to take a little segue here because we're going to talk about Ginny and love of animals and love of writing and all these books and all this publishing history. But we're also going to take the side swipe and talk about very quickly, Ginny, just so that we have context about the conference, which is the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference, which you helped set up how many years ago?
The conference started in 1989. I think I arrived on the coast in 91, and I was the first. I started. Suzanne Byerly and I got to be really close friends. And when Marlis Broadhead decided that she was going to leave and move to Oklahoma, they were going to close down the conference. And so Suzanne and I took it over in 1996.
Right.
And I retired from doing that after 20, I think I did it for 25 years or 26 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Ran, was president of the board, got you involved.
yes. And so, all right. So little like, let's come back to the mainstream. So the second agent also from a referral, and the book that she was trying to sell at that time was Hurt Go Happy, which had come about how?
Well, while I was writing Dolphin Sky and having it rejected over and over again it took 8 years. It was published I started it in 1985 and it was published in 1994.
How many years of that was on submission, like with your agent actively trying to sell it?
I think it was about probably 7 years. 7 years.
So they were
And
trying to sell it for 7 years?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, but remember, this is what she would do. She didn't send it out to a bunch of people. She had this theory that you send it out to one, and if they reject it, then you send it out to the next one. And of course, it took them 2 or 3 months to get back to you. So that eats up a lot of time.
Mhm.
So she
Right.
finally got it on the desk of Kathy Dawson it was GP Putnam back then. It's now Dial Penguin, whatever. But anyway, they published Dolphin Sky.
Right. Okay, so actually before we zoom past this, so after all that, like so in that process, did you ever just because I hear complaints now when people say, oh, my book hasn't been picked up yet. It's been out there for a year, so all hope is lost. I've wasted all this time, blah blah. Like, did you think in as those 7 years progressed, like was your agent absolutely sure that she could sell it? What was the feeling over this book, and how were you feeling about it?
I think probably I'd kind of given up on it because when the call came in that she had sold it, I had moved here to Northern California and I know a lot about birds, lots about birds. And so there's a little store in town in Mendocino used to be called Papa Birds. And so I went in there. I didn't know anybody when I moved here. So I went in and asked for a job there. So when that call came in that the book had sold, I was selling bird seed to some poor woman. And I said, oh my God, my book sold. And I think I scared the shit out of her. There with a bag of seed. And, anyway. So, but at the time I was working on, I had gotten hooked on in 1988, I started, even though I was working, that's about right. 1988, I read a story about a sign language using chimpanzee. And so I started writing Hurt Go Happy, which is about a sign language using chimpanzee, but the main character, Joey, is deaf. And so I did amazing amount of research on the deaf community, reading all these books. So I was really working pretty hard on Hurt Go Happy through that whole process.
Mhm.
But we couldn't sell that one either. And this was now I had the new agent. And it was, I quit writing for about 3 years. I was so, before I got Laura, I had quit writing because I was just frustrated. Nobody wanted Dolphin Sky. Once Dolphin Sky was published, the editor, Kathy Dawson, didn't want Hurt Go Happy because she said it was 2 books. And I was determined it wasn't going to be 2 books, so she didn't want it. And then I got Laura, and she sold it in 7 weeks. I mean, and it was, all of a sudden, it made all the difference. The right agent with the right connections.
Right. It only takes that one yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And that yes came from Susan Chang over at Tor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've said to me in the past that Hurt Go Happy is the book that you're the most proud of. So can you tell us why?
I think because of the effort that went into it and the response. It won the Schneider Family Book Award. And I've gotten the most reaction. The deaf community, I've had wonderful compliments from them, and it was taught in the deaf schools in Florida. I traveled to Sweden. It came out in 7 languages. I traveled to Sweden and went to the deaf community in Sweden, and giving with a friend who was Swedish, so she could actually interpret for me. And although almost everybody speaks English. And so I think I sunk heart and soul into that book. And I love the characters, especially the little chimpanzee. And I had a connection with a young chimpanzee in Florida. There was a woman that was just down the street from where I lived with my husband, and that she had 3 chimpanzees and an orangutan. And I hung out down there all the time. We're still friends. She's got a huge facility in Central Florida now with 67 chimpanzees and orangutans. It's called the Center for Great Apes. And I've been really supportive of hers for all these years. So.
Wow, that's cool. So Hurt Go Happy does really well, and you have an agent, and you have another book outside of a horse that you're working on, right? So was it like plain sailing then, placing outside of a horse?
It wasn't, well, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. Yes. I wrote the book, and I wrote it in a couple of years. There was a stable down the street, and I hung out there every weekend because I didn't know anything about horses. But I got hooked on the idea of it. The thing about Lucy, the chimpanzee, is that she learned sign language. She grew up, she became uncontrollable. They sent her to a preserve in Africa where she signed to a person who had taught her sign language. Lucy want help. Lucy needs help. Let me out, please. And I just broke my heart. And that's the impetus for that book. When I heard about the fact that Barbaro was the racehorse that had won the Kentucky Derby and then had to be put down because he broke his ankle. That was that, and the fact that the horses, so many of them in the racing industry end up and go to slaughter, was the impetus for writing about the horses. And so I wrote a book that has about every horrible thing you can do to a horse pretty much in that book. Unfortunately, I kind of went overboard on how upset I was by the treatment of horses. And the main character's father is a vet, a Vietnam War vet who comes back missing a leg. And so that was the story, the melding of the 2 stories. And both Susan Chang and Kathy Dawson wanted it, which was wonderful. I had wanted to work with Kathy again because she was the editor on Dolphin Sky. And so I went with what was Dial Penguin then. And I think I would have been better off with Tor. It got the outside of a horse didn't get the greatest reviews. And so Dial Penguin just kind of didn't bother to support it again. It was a book fair selection, a Scholastic book fair selection. So the Dial Penguin never made it a paperback, but the paperback, the only one was the book fair selection. So, and they just kind of let it go. And I tried to get the rights back to it and couldn't because it's been remaindered. So, you can only find it in a Libris or something. So I think if I'd gone with Tor after Hurt Go Happy, I would have had a second book with him, and then I would have had the third book with him eventually. So
Mhm.
I think I made a mistake because I wanted to work with Kathy again.
Mhm.
Kathy ever pokes her head into this.
And so not a hugely happy experience. So the next book, which was Freeing Finch, you did go back to Susan Chang and Tor.
Yes, but there's two books in between.
Oh shoot, you're absolutely right. I forgot. The next one after that is How to Speak Dolphin, right?
So after the Outside of a Horse, my agent sort of I have to say she fired me. Um, she said I wrote really short emails. I don't know that's why would you write a long one if you can get it said in a word or two. So anyway, I was
Ask me again when we're off camera.
anyhow, she fired me. And right after she fired me, I was going through a low part of my writing career again. And so I picked up Dolphin Sky and started to read it. And I thought, well, good God, I can sure write better than this now. I mean, I wrote it when I've been writing for 3 years, and now I've been writing for, 20, 30 years. And so to just keep my hand in, I rewrote it. And I rewrote it, and then I self-published it. I went on, I don't know, Amy, a friend, helped me self-publish the 25th anniversary edition of Dolphin Sky. And so I have no agent. And so I just wrote to the headquarters of Scholastic in New York. I have no idea who I wrote to. I mean, I just thought, and I described the book and, whatever. And I didn't hear anything back. That was a silly thing to do, I thought. And a couple, I don't know, probably 6 months later, I get an email from an editor at Scholastic. And she said, we got your letter about Dolphin Sky. And I said, I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, that worked. And so I said, oh, are you interested in Dolphin Sky? She said, no, we're not. We're interested, though, in having you write a book for us about dolphins. And I said, well, now this is how sometimes you can see how stupid I could be. I said, oh, well, I really don't work like that. To an editor at Scholastic, I mean, like I could shoot myself in both feet. And I said, I have to be caught up in the story and really care about the animals and so on. And I said, so I really don't. She said, well, could I at least send you the synopsis? And I said, well, sure, of course. I'm perfectly open to that. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, she sent it, and it's about an autistic kid who goes through dolphin assisted therapy. And I said, oh, there's no way I'm going to do that. I totally don't believe in that. Captive dolphins, and it doesn't work anyway. I mean, it's just BS. So I wrote this letter to her that I wouldn't do it, and why I wouldn't do it, because and so, but thankfully I didn't send it the day I wrote it. I waited overnight, and I woke the next morning and I thought, I need to rethink this. So I called Emily at Scholastic and I said, listen, could we change it? I might do it if I can release the dolphin, if I can let the dolphin go. She said, oh, sure. So there we are. And so I flew to Florida and did all the research in like 2 weeks. And of course, I've lived in Florida most of my life, so it wasn't hard. And I wrote it in 2 years. And that is my big success story, because they sold about 250,000 copies in the book fair selection. And I kept getting these checks that I thought had too many zeros on them because I'd never seen anything that big. And so that was.
Oh, if you don't mind, Ginny, I've never seen anything too big. That could be like, in royalty land, that could be $1,000. But you kind of just go through your first, second, and then your third.
Okay, so normally checks, advances were somewhere usually 10,000 to 15,000, I think were the most advanced that I ever got. And I think Scholastic might have been 10 or 12. I can't remember, but the first check I got, so I cleared, used up that, and first check I got was like $20,000. And I thought, oh boy. And the second check I got was $60,000, 65,000, and the third one was at 121,000. And I thought, well, I mean, I really seriously thought that they had made a mistake. I didn't say anything right away. I figured they'd ask for it back. But anyway, that was never, I've never had, I mean, I've never had sales like, I mean, that was just ridiculous.
I mean, that's, so I think that why a lot of people are coming and listening to this is because you've had so many different publishers and different experiences. And we've been talking mostly about the big five, but Scholastic, for those of you who don't know, Scholastic is not a big five publisher, but Scholastic is a book club publisher. So they don't focus on selling your books in bookstores. They focus on selling it at book clubs through schools. Right. And sometimes those runs are much, much larger. Well, this first run, I mean, they really believed in this book, though. I mean, obviously they did, because they actually kind of someone engineered the concept and then came and asked you to write it. Yeah. They believed in the book so much that the first run was 250,000 and then they sold it out, right? Yeah. So now you're as a publisher, you're really backing your hand when you're doing that. So congratulations and well done. And I'm interested. You said that you thought that all the dolphin therapy was bullshit. But after you did your research, did you still have that opinion?
Absolutely. I still feel that way. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's just an opportunity to swim with dolphins. It's not, it doesn't work at all. I mean, and there was a lot of research into, whether it's just a fun thing for any kid to enjoy, but not for the dolphins. And I mean, there should be free. I mean, horse therapy, I absolutely believe in equine therapy. But horses are herd animals. Dolphins need to be with families. And so I was allowed to let the dolphin go. And there's actually, I went to a place in Florida in Marco Island, and we named one of the dolphins Nori, which is the name of the dolphin in the book. And so there's a real Dory free in the ocean around Marco Island. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But out of curiosity, did anybody in marketing ever tell you to be a little less outspoken about how you felt about whether it was a bullshit or not, or were they totally okay with that?
They were totally okay with it. Totally okay.
That's good.
Yeah. So, yes. And that character is the autistic child, and then there's a blind character in that book. She's not the lead character, but she's, so I've always got a kid with some kind of disability of some sort, mostly.
Okay, because this takes us to a really interesting turn then. So you're coming off, yes. I've got your books ordered, right? You're coming off this big success, and you go back to an editor that you know and love, and a big publisher, Tor Macmillan, and you do Freeing Finch, right?
Yeah.
How was the, so I'll quickly tell everyone what Freeing Finch is about first.
Well, first of all, we have a doctor here in town, an orthopedic surgeon, age 70, great orthopedic surgeon. And Amy McGee was over here one day helping me with something on the computer. And she said, Bill Rohr had a sex change operation. And I said, what? And I had been working with Bill on issues with the hospital and putting together groups because we were trying to rescue our hospital, which we thought was going down. And so I just next time I saw him, I asked him about what this, and he said, I have been in my heart a female all my life. And so he went to his wife 3 years before she, now Kate Rohr, had the confirmation surgery. And so I was so curious about it. And Kate was wonderful about helping me explore all the science behind transgenderism. And so I had written a book a long time ago about an abandoned dog and a kid whose mother had died. But she had remarried. Before she died, she remarried. And so she was being raised by her stepfather, who then remarried. So she's got parents that aren't her parents. And so she's sort of abandoned. and the dog was abandoned, and that was the story. And there's an old lady who rehabs animals, and you can figure out who that might be. And a character in the book. And anyway, I thought I can do this. I can make her a transgender character. And so that's what I did. I just changed her to a transgender character, but I did a lot of research. And Kate helped me through everything. And if anybody's interested, Kate Rohr was interviewed by Katie Couric for a National Geographic special. And so they're the last couple in the program. And she was also, the Washington Post did an article and a video of her going into surgery and, coming back out with making an outie and innie and Adam's apple gone. And I mean, it's really fascinating. And Thor took it. And then,
this is really interesting because you got kind of a bad Kirkus review.
I got it. Yeah, a friend of mine called it Jerkus review. I got a Jerkus review. Anyway, Kirkus said I had named the character Finch Delgado, and the character Delgado came from the minister that lived next door to us when I was growing up in Winter Park. And the complaint is that I wasn't Latina, and or Hispanic, and what was I doing writing about a Hispanic character? It's never mentioned anything about whether she was Hispanic or not. Her dad's name just happens to be Delgado. So anyway, but I think what they were really problem is that I'm not trans and the character was, and so I shouldn't have the right to write about anything like that. And so it was a pretty horrible review, pretty bad.
Right. It was my understanding, not only from you, but also from Susan, was that there was a lot of pushback on that whole appropriation thing about, you're white, you're appropriating perhaps a Hispanic character, and you're not trans and you're appropriating the trans story. That at one point, this whole industry was so hot about this appropriation, in my opinion, bullshit. But
yeah, totally.
yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm not a chimpanzee either, but I mean, what you do is your research, your goddamn research. So anyway, yeah, I got torn.
right, and it's really interesting to me, just to underscore this, is that in your books, and in this like whole long big five like line of successful books, you wrote about a deaf child when you're not deaf, and the deaf community, not only the deaf community in this country, but the deaf community in Sweden and other places around the world valued and wanted this book. You wrote about autistic kids, the same. You had blind characters in your books, the same. So this was the first time that you had experienced any kind of pushback about not being. So it was like the industry all of a sudden had changed.
Right.
In between two books. Published how far apart?
Well, I don't know, because that came out. We've skipped Lost in the River of Grass. So How to Speak Dolphin and Lost in the River of Grass came out really close together. And then this one came out in 2019, I think. And it's now, banned in Iowa, Florida, and Texas that I know of. I could actually chat GBT and find out how many states it's banned in, but it's one on the banned book list. So but at least I'm very proud of that.
Right. So, and it's banned because it's trans positive, basically.
Yes. Of course it is. Yeah. Anyway,
right.
We are.
So then that was hugely disappointing to you. And I'm gonna finish your kind of publishing history, and then I'm gonna loop back and ask you some questions about it, just so that we have all the context in place first. Which, as it is, you can see I'm not having a good time like getting your books in the right order. But
I'm not doing it. I'm not getting them in the right order either, I'm afraid.
I know, it's like blind leading blind here. All right. So, but then came Like Dust I Rise. And you decided to do what was a pretty radical thing, because you've had these like big publishing companies you had an agent. Wait, when did you lose the agent? You lost the agent before How to Speak Dolphin,
Right, right.
which was a big
Missed
bonus
out
because
on
you
the big
get to,
checks.
huh?
She missed out on the big checks.
Yeah, right. She was big checks. And then so your agent, you don't have an agent. That hasn't stopped you from like publishing with big publishers though. So there's something else going on when you then decide that you're going to publish like Dust I Rise, which I remember you working on. So that was a book that took you a lot of heart and a lot of time. You decide to do it with a publisher who, depending on how you look at it, they call themselves a small publisher. I
Right,
tend to see them as a hybrid press. And
right.
so, but either way, what made you pivot? What made you?
Well, because both cat, I can always go. So Emily wasn't Emily at Scholastic didn't want it because the problem is the character. This pisses me off. The character in the beginning is 10. At the end of the book, she is 24. And so she was too young in the beginning for YA and too old in the end for middle grade. And so it was rejected by Scholastic, by Kathy Dawson, by Susan Chang, all for that reason. And I thought, what the fuck happened? Sorry, what in hell happened to, you knew that was going to come out eventually. Anyway, what happened to coming of age stories? And I did change it a little. And out of the frustration of a friend had gone with Black Rose and they liked it, and I thought I'm the heck with it. I'm just gonna give it a try and call it a coming of age novel. And it's gotten great reviews, but it's this hybrid publisher. And so, I think it's like we're up to maybe 800 or 900 copies sold. So, and it's fine. The book it's a really good book. And I did change it where she's 10 in the beginning and 17 at the end. And then there's epilogue where she achieves her dream of, flying. So anyway,
Mhm, mhm.
um,
So what was uh and then wait. Just put a pin in that and come back to that. And so
okay,
then after that, your experience with them was happy enough at the very least that you gave them also your next book, which was Girl Under Glass,
right,
right?
right. I
And
didn't even try. I mean, I did query. I did try to find an agent for it. I thought I'd try to go back and see because this book is sort of something I've been working on actually since I started writing. The first thing I ever wrote for a creative writing class was called The Greenhouse. And it was based on the book that I had read, The Secret Life of Plants. And if anybody has read Light Eaters, which is a great book on the plant communication that's out now, it's a terrific book. All the recent science and stuff is in there. But when I first started writing this, that was just, Cleve Baxter doing is putting his plants hooked to a lie detector,
mhm, mhm,
So literally worked on this book off and on for 40 years. And so, and I thought I'm not waiting any longer. And Black Rose took it. And so I went with it.
mhm. And
And
now and
so,
now you've got a ninth one coming.
yeah, yeah, yes.
Time after time. And we're and
I
okay.
know. For some reason, this one, I don't know how I got it in my craw that I was going to write a time travel book, but this is about an autistic Asperger kid with Asperger. At least now it's neurodiverse, but he has Asperger syndrome. And I have the entire history of our lighthouse in my head. And so I hate to let that go to waste, what little there's left up there. And so I wanted to do a book where he time travels to the lighthouse and he meets the lighthouse keeper's daughter. And so that's what this book is about. And the lighthouse there's a wonderful history of the lighthouse, and they rescue a gray whale trapped in crab traps. And so that is the story. But so he goes back and forth. Well, for some reason, time travel is no, nobody wants time travel now. I don't know. So anyway, that has never deterred me. What somebody doesn't want has not stopped me.
No, and I noticed that the appropriation thing didn't didn't deter you either. So good on you. Okay, so that's kind of the arc as it's sketched out now. So I think that the thing that most people in the room would really like to know is which was like the best publishing experience? Like if you could wave your little magic wand, you've had the big five publishers, you've had a boutique publisher that probably gave you, we know that she gave you a lot more time, I think, right?
But
Um,
yeah.
and
And of course there's the other one the book that we skipped is Lost in the River of Grass, which was learned by Lerner, which is a
which is the boutique, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah. And so you've had the boutique experience, you've had the big five experience, you've had like also massive but not quite big five, you've had book club, and now you've had this kind of so small that we're gonna do just call it small slash hybrid
Right.
press.
Right.
And you're thinking that maybe you'll self-publish the next one, but we don't need to discuss that on in this meeting. Let's just deal with what you've already done. So, of the experience that you've already had, what do you think was to you personally the most rewarding, or you felt like the most supported, or where, what you would, if you could wave your wand, what you would do again?
Um, I actually, Kathy Dawson, I loved the way she working with her. Of course, that was my very first experience working with her. And so I really I loved because her comments always were followed. She'd say something and it was followed by a question mark. So it left it up to me to accept or not accept. I loved that. I thought Susan Chang was an amazing editor. She did a lot. When Emily at Scholastic, when I sent her the original manuscript, she wrote back this glowing, like, oh, we're so thrilled. This is just wonderful. And then I got hit with the edits, and it was an amazing trip. And she was really probably the best editor that I've ever had, perhaps except for maybe you, with what I'm dealing with at the moment. Anyhow, she was fantastic. She was really fantastic. And so I think that I enjoyed that less at the moment because I'm thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then, but when I get into it, I realize what a really great book she made out of it. And so, and Kathy was new, and I was a new writer. And Kathy ended up with her own imprint for a while at Dial Penguin, and then the Kathy Dawson Books, and then she retired. And so, I guess so. And I mean, as far as Black Rose goes, they are a little bit selective about what they take. Friends have gotten their books rejected by them. They offer no editorial input, but well, it's some program that you put through the computer and it tries to correct your grammar, and stuff like that. It's a useless program, I think. But they're very receptive to. I mean, I email the director or the guy in charge of there, and I get an email back like that. So they're very responsive, but they don't have the you got to do your own marketing, and I'm not good at that. I'm not good at self promotion at all, and so that's
because I often tell all my writers that no matter how big your publisher is, when the book comes out of the gate, you have to paddle.
right.
Everyone has to paddle. So, but are you saying that when you were with your big publishers, you didn't do any marketing at all?
I knew not a whole lot. I didn't do any with Scholastic. I didn't do anything with Scholastic for and I didn't do anything for Hurt Go Happy. I had a guy write me, and we're going to actually meet for the very first time in May. And this was 2000. That book came out in 2004, I think. Hurt Go Happy did. And he wrote and he said this would be a perfect candidate for the Schneider Family Book Award at the American Library Association Schneider Family Book Award. He was a librarian in Ohio. And bless Tim's heart, I contacted Susan. They sent it, it won. And so it was, and the Snyder Family Book Award is about kids with handicaps of some sort. And so that was a huge thrill, won in 2008. And anyway, like I said, I'm going to meet Tim for the first time in May when I go to Kentucky. So what was the question? Where were we? The only thing I did for Lost in the River of Grass, the promotion that I did was I made postcards and I sent them to all the schools in Florida. And it won the Sunshine State Reading Award. And so I think that was a big help. I think that was a big help.
What was on your postcard? Was the postcard like I had got
just
the book,
the
or
elevator speech and the cover of the book and the elevator speech.
so the aim was to just raise awareness that the book was out there.
Right. And also it was a book fair selection. Most of my books have been, most of the ones that were big 5 publishers were all my book fair selections, Scholastic book fair selections. And Junior Literary Guild book club. I think there used to be, I don't know whether they still have but both of those. So
Right.
and it was nominated for the Hurt Go Happy was nominated for the Truman Award and a bunch of state awards. So I also would go and do school classrooms. I don't do that anymore much, but I got an offer a couple of weeks ago to go to Florida. But so anyway, I'm going to be there like a week after they wanted me, so I would have to go a week early. So I said I could Zoom, but we'll see. So.
Right. Huh. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that you really missed the having an editor, though. That was like one demerit for like going on.
Yeah, definitely miss that. I'm just not very good at it, I don't think. And you just miss so much of what the mistakes you've made yourself.
Right.
So I can see it in other people's writing sometime, but yeah.
And it's always been really interesting to me that, so you've said that the book that was most commercially successful, at least 250,000 copies, was not the book that even comes close to being the one that you found that you're proudest of, or you found most satisfying.
Right.
So
I spent years doing research for Hurt Go Happy. I mean, that was a huge amount, not only for the chimpanzees, and that was the more easy part, I think, but the deaf community, because to screw up there would have been disastrous to me to have gotten that wrong.
So, but and there was another time talking to you which I think was really funny, was when you could not give me, like, say, apart from the $250,000 the 250,000 copy book run, you actually had no idea really how many of any other book you've ever sold. But you could tell me how many 5-star reviews you got for different titles.
Yeah.
So which tells me that maybe is closer to what success is like for you, right? It's like that and the letters that you get written, and just knowing that your book is out there and that people are enjoying your books.
Right. And that I get the letters that I get from kids sometimes are just amazing. For the outside of a horse, I got the most wonderful letters mostly from girls who love horses. And I mean, that's who I wanted to reach. I mean, I don't care about the income. Thankfully I didn't need it. And so if I had been writing where I was trying to support myself writing, I would have lasted 2 years on Scholastics. Big deal. And that would have been it.
But what's interesting, I think, what is like a predicament for a lot of writers is that, yes, it absolutely might have nothing to do with the income. You're not doing it for the commercial success of it. But yet, in order to realize that ambition to reach kids, you have to reach kids. You need a certain amount of reach.
Right.
So how has that worked in with your Black Rose experience? Because your reach is quite limited. You said you're about at 800 and something copies now.
Yeah, that's of Like Dust I Rise, which is yeah, that was yeah. I mean, they don't do they do some marketing, and I think I did more for Girl Under Glass. I submitted for reviews and stuff like that. I've spent a lot more than I'll ever make off either one of the books doing reviews and that kind of thing. And of course the research for Like Dust I Rise, I spent a week in most ugly place in the planet, Dalhart, Texas, where it was the heart of the Dust Bowl. And so I spent a lot of time there. And so I've spent a lot more on that I'll ever recoup. But it was important to me to write that book, and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad it's out there and it's gotten good reviews, and it's kind of crossed the line. So I think it's gotten more reviews because adults are reading it, and not just it's not. I mean, it really isn't a kid book. It's just it's coming of age. So and whereas Girl Under Glass is still MGYA, somewhere in between there, and of course that's that's hard market. I can't, Black Rose isn't equipped to get that out there into schools or anything like that. So
And is this like 2020 vision in hindsight, or at that time did you think Black Rose really can't get me into schools, but I'm just gonna do it anyway.
yeah, that was the answer. I was sure that they wouldn't be, it would be an okay book, it'd be all right, but I wasn't, I was done with it. I've done with it. I've written that book for years, and I was just done with it. So now it's there. Something magic can happen. You never know.
And if it doesn't happen, will that be, do you think that you'll regret that decision?
No, I'm not going to look back and think that that I'm going to regret it. No, because I don't think it would ever get published otherwise. I don't think it. I don't know. I can't know that, because you need an agent to get to the bigger publishers. And I mean, I worked on getting an agent for that one for a long time. I mean, I didn't like just, okay, I give up, I'm not going to try. I think I told you earlier, and I think that I've had a really good run at it. I've had a good career. I've been writing now for 30 something years, 30 whatever years. And I think the attempt to find an agent for me was, I have the great track record, but they're concerned about the future. What kind of future does that person have? And I think that may be part of the problem. It's a little bit ageism, but I think that should be part of it. So, and who knows, maybe I'm not writing the stuff that they think is something that would interest kids nowadays. I don't know.
But also, I think, as you know, as your marketing mentor, I think that you might not be pitching it right. So
that's true.
That's why at our publishing intensive in January, I'm going
That's right. I'm signed up.
Different query letter.
This old dog's going to learn a new trick or two.
So yeah, no, this is the thing. I think that most people, the thing about publishing is if it hasn't happened to you yet, it's like trying to look through a curtain. No one can quite see what the experience is like on the other side. And then, as you and I have spoken about in the past, like even if you've had several books published, it's hard to see through the next curtain, which is what are the agents thinking, what are the publishers really thinking. Right. Until I started publishing myself, I had no idea. And then once I did, it was like, oh, why don't they tell most people this right from the beginning? So what I would like to help everyone in the room see is how a few things are really interesting to me about your story. One is that the most satisfaction that you got did not come from the best-selling book, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great. But the converse side of that is that even if you're not after the commercial success, sometimes you need to have that reach, because if your goal is to reach these people and touch their hearts, you need
Right.
to reach those people. So, so the whole kind of, do you go small, do you go big? How long do you persevere in the agent hunt? Or how at what point do you kind of do something else for yourself? All of those things, there are no black and white answers. You have to kind of feel them out, each person for themselves. But I think that you were about to say something. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Well, one of the other things is that when you go with a big five, all the negotiations and all of that stuff, and then it's 18 months usually is an average about how long it's going to take for a book to come out, right? Because you go through all the editorial stuff, and that's all good because that would be the editorial stuff and the rewrites and all of that stuff. So 18 months out. With Black Rose is like 9 months. It's fast. And part of that is the fact that there's no help editorially or any of that stuff. They do help with, they did a lot of NetGalley submissions for it, so I got a lot of reviews from NetGalley. They sent those out. They did the audio, Audible. They made that recording and had the person do the reading. And so those kind of things, I think that was all about me feeling my age. I mean, I'm 80. To get a book and 2 years from now it's out, I might be pushing up Daisy somewhere. I mean, I might not be here to enjoy the whatever. The other thing about getting it out, reaching, the reason I think that How to Speak Dolphin, my best-selling one, is not the one, is the letters that I got from kids and the input I got was frequently, I'd love to swim with a dolphin. Well, you've missed the point, and whereas the ones that I got on Hurt Go Happy and the outside of a horse were, I mean, it touched their hearts. They felt it. They understood. They were heartbroken when at the end of the book, that was the reason that was the important one to me, is because that I got where I wanted to go with that book. And that was deep inside kids' brains about the horrors about animals, and especially chimpanzees, and the way they've been treated for not only for research, but for movies and shit like that. So.
So looking back on this 30+ year career, what do you think you said you almost made a mistake. You almost turned down the Scholastic, and you're glad that you didn't now. But what do you think was the one thing that you did right? Not, obviously, hopefully you did many things right, but like that one little piece of wisdom that you would like to pass on. And then conversely, what was a mistake that you made that you would avoid now?
Well, I mean, you got to continue to write. I mean, you can't, I mean, I think as writers, none of us cannot write. I mean, I have to do it. I mean, what else would I do if I wasn't writing? But I love, of course, writing trains and writing any excuse to get out, go somewhere and write. I mean, I'm not great about writing at home. I actually have my desk here, and then I set myself up in the living room, and then I go to work out there. And because here I'll tend to play solitaire or something. And so we have to write in the publishing industry. I mean, look at all the books that come out every year. And I mean, there are now something like 1 million a year or something. I don't know what the statistics are. So I mean,
5 million was the last I heard.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're up against. There's so many books out there and so many good books to read that you feel like, why in the world do I do this? And it's because I can't not do it. And so I think the thing is I kept marching on. I just kept going and just continue to write. And if you get something published, then that's a huge accomplishment compared to other people. Millions of people are not going to get. I mean, you see people all the time, oh, I'm going to write a book, or I've written a book, or we're the lucky ones. We're the lucky ones. what I did wrong. The only thing, I don't really have any regrets, I don't think, except that I might have should have gone with Susan with the outside of a horse, but other than that, I think I'm okay. I'm all right.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it.